What if the body you stumbled upon in a quiet neighborhood was so brutally mutilated, so meticulously staged, that it could only mean one thing? This was no ordinary murder. On January 15, 1947, Betty Bersinger found herself standing over a body on Norton Avenue in Los Angeles, one that would shock the world. At first, she thought it was a mannequin, but as she got closer, she realized the horrifying truth. It was a woman, cut in half, drained of blood, and with a twisted, haunting smile carved into her face. Who could do such a thing? And why? This grisly discovery would ignite a mystery that would haunt Los Angeles for decades. Who was behind this chilling crime? And why did the killer want to leave behind such a cryptic, grotesque message? The victim, 22-year-old Elizabeth Short, would come to be known as the Black Dahlia. But what made her a target? Was it a crime of passion? A random act of violence? Or was there something far more sinister behind this murder? The sun had barely risen when Betty Bersinger's walk through Los Angeles' Norton Avenue would take a turn she would never forget. She had just taken her regular stroll through the quiet neighborhood when she spotted what she thought was a mannequin, discarded and lifeless in the vacant lot. But as she approached, she realized with horror that it wasn't a mannequin. It was a woman's body, brutally cut in half, no blood drained from her body, and an eerie, grotesque smile carved into her face. Betty froze, panic surging through her. The sight before her was like something straight out of a nightmare. She did the only thing she could think to do: call the police. Minutes later, officers arrived at the scene. They confirmed what Betty feared. This wasn't an accident. It was a crime. The body belonged to 22-year-old Elizabeth Short, a woman who had come to Los Angeles to pursue a career in acting, but whose life would end in one of the most gruesome and haunting murders in American history. The police launched an investigation, but they faced a major problem. No one knew who Elizabeth Short was. She had lived in Los Angeles off and on, staying in various hotels and apartments. She was described as a drifter, moving from place to place, always trying to break into the film industry but never quite making it. No one knew her well, and the city was filled with women chasing the same dream. There were no obvious connections to anyone in the city, no apparent motive for the brutal murder. The case quickly became a mystery without any answers. Days passed, and the police had little to go on. But just as it seemed the case would go cold, a letter arrived at the Los Angeles Examiner. The envelope, carefully constructed from clipped letters torn from newspapers and magazines, looked like something straight out of a crime novel. It read, "Los Angeles Examiner and other Los Angeles papers. Here is Dahlia's belongings. Letter to follow." Inside the envelope were Elizabeth's personal items: a birth certificate, social security card, photos, and an address book with pages missing. Everything had been doused in gasoline to remove any fingerprints. Whoever had sent the envelope wanted to be noticed. They weren't just a killer. They were someone who wanted to play with the media, to toy with the public's emotions. The question on everyone's mind was, why? As more letters continued to arrive, the mystery deepened. Some were cryptic, others more direct. One letter, signed by the Black Dahlia Avenger, even hinted that the killer might turn themselves in, but the police could never track the sender down. The more the killer communicated, the more elusive they became, as if daring the police to find them, but making sure they were always one step ahead. While the letters added to the intrigue, the investigation struggled to make any progress. Elizabeth's tragic death became a media sensation, and the public's curiosity grew. Who was this woman? Why was she targeted? And, most haunting of all, who was the person responsible for such a gruesome act? Theories about Elizabeth's life and her murder began to emerge. One of the first suspects to come up was Robert Manley. He was a man who had been seen with Elizabeth just days before her body was discovered. Robert had driven Elizabeth to Los Angeles from San Diego and had helped her check into the Biltmore Hotel. Many believed that the Biltmore was the last place she was seen alive. But Robert was quickly cleared. He passed a polygraph test, and there was no evidence linking him to the crime. However, there was one troubling detail that surfaced later. In 1954, Robert was committed to a mental hospital after he began hearing voices. The connection between this and the murder was never clear, but the timing was strange, leaving some to wonder if Robert had been involved. Yet, without any solid evidence, he was ruled out as a suspect. Then came the case of Joseph Dumais, an army corporal who claimed to have spent time with Elizabeth shortly before her death. According to Dumais, they were both drunk in San Francisco, and he had no memory of the night. When asked if he thought he could have killed Elizabeth, Dumais responded, "Yes." But as the investigation continued, it was revealed that Dumais had been stationed on a military base the day Elizabeth was murdered, and he was quickly dismissed as a suspect. Still, his confession raised eyebrows, and the mystery continued to deepen. But it was the introduction of George Hodel, a highly intelligent and well-connected doctor, that would throw the investigation into darker waters. George Hodel ran Los Angeles County's venereal disease clinic, and his expertise in surgery and anatomy made him a chilling suspect. It wasn't just his career that drew attention, it was his strange behavior, the fact that he had a secret room in his house, and the unsettling rumors that swirled around his private life. The most disturbing revelation came from George's son, Steve Hodel, who was convinced that his father was the killer. Steve had grown up in his father's household and had always sensed something was off about George. As Steve began to investigate his father's past, he discovered a troubling connection between George and the murder of Elizabeth Short. Among the most significant pieces of evidence were photos in George's collection of a woman who looked eerily similar to Elizabeth. Forensic experts, while divided, estimated that the woman in the photos was 85% likely to be Elizabeth. The resemblance was striking, and Steve began to believe that his father was not just involved in the murder, he might have been the killer. But there was more. Steve discovered that his father's handwriting bore a disturbing similarity to the handwriting on the infamous letters sent to the press during the Black Dahlia investigation. Experts reviewed the comparisons, but the results were inconclusive. Some believed the match was clear, while others weren't so sure. But as Steve delved deeper, he found other unsettling clues, things that couldn't be ignored. Perhaps the most chilling evidence came when George was unknowingly recorded in a conversation. The tape revealed George saying, "Supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia, they couldn't prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary anymore because she's dead." This statement sent a shockwave through Steve. Could his father have actually confessed? And, if so, what did he mean by the death of his secretary? Was George Hodel involved in other crimes? And if so, what had been covered up? As Steve dug deeper into the case, he uncovered even more evidence that pointed back to George. He tracked down a police file that contained testimony from a woman who claimed to have seen George and Elizabeth together just days before the murder. Yet, despite the mounting evidence, the LAPD did little to investigate George. The case was officially closed, and the police didn't follow up on any new leads. In 2012, Steve took his investigation a step further. He returned to his father's old home with a police dog, which led them to a chilling discovery. The dog sniffed the soil behind the house, indicating the presence of human remains. Soil samples were collected, and the results confirmed that human remains had once been present in the area. But when Steve tried to get the LAPD to investigate further, they refused. This refusal, combined with the strange circumstances surrounding the case, raised even more questions. Had George Hodel been protected by powerful figures in Los Angeles? Had the LAPD been involved in a cover-up? The more Steve uncovered, the more it seemed that the Black Dahlia case was a tangled web of corruption and secrecy that had been swept under the rug for decades. The Black Dahlia murder remains one of the most haunting and enduring mysteries in American history. Despite the decades of investigation, theories, and suspects, the killer remains unidentified. The questions still linger. Was George Hodel responsible? Or is the true killer still out there, waiting to be discovered? If you've enjoyed this dive into the mystery of the Black Dahlia, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, turn on your notification, like, comment, and share for more unsolved mysteries and true crime stories. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time. What do you think? Was George Hodel the killer, or is there another dark secret waiting to be uncovered? Let us know in the comments below.